I have the opportunity to speak today with another amazing chiropractor, and here's who he is.
I am Dr. Tony DeRamus, and I am an excited chiropractor that has been one of the first people to ever bring their company into multi-locations and $10 million in revenue per year. I'm also a number one best-selling author of the Secret Addiction book, but probably my biggest claim to fame is I was the first chiropractor ever to be contracted by an NFL cheerleading squad and actually got paid for it.
Hello and welcome to Secrets of My Success, part of For the Love of Chiropractic podcast series. On each episode, I'll be interviewing one highly successful doctor or business person, asking them what are their 3 keys of success or secrets they've used to make themselves so highly successful. So let's get started with today's show. I have on the phone with me today a longtime friend of mine, Dr. Tony DeRamus. Tony, are you there?
I am there, Robert. Nice to see you, buddy.
Oh, man, it is so good to hear your voice. You know, we don't get to catch up nearly often enough anymore.
No, we don't. But we have a long history together.
Oh, man, yes, we do. So let me ask you a question, because I know, but obviously the listening audience doesn't. So how many years have you been a chiropractor?
Oh my gosh, longer than I want to admit at this point. I graduated in 1998, so that was an extremely long time ago. So over 25 years now. Been an exciting career so far, so looking forward to see what's going to be happening up ahead.
Absolutely. And you went to which school?
Parker University. You know, I didn't really know much about chiropractic when I joined. I just knew that I understood body mechanics. I understood that I wanted to treat athletes, and I knew that Dallas was a cool city. And so I went to Parker University.
That's awesome. So is that how you found your way into chiropractic?
Yeah, it was really almost, if you really want to know the real story behind it, I was really undecided on what I wanted to do and didn't know anything about chiropractic when I decided I needed to apply. And the reason why I applied is because I had a girlfriend in college that we'd broken up and I needed to get out of that university. So I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and just stack up on my classes this summer and I'm going to apply to chiropractic college. And lo and behold, I got an acceptance letter within 2 to 3 weeks. So that started that path down this road that, in hindsight, there's no doubt that it was a God calling because this has been my passion from day one. Actually, when Jim Parker walked in the room and he said he made that comment, he said, "Now some of you here may be here for monetary reasons only." And I was thinking, well, that probably is me. How did he know this? Then subsequently went to my first Parker seminar, went to a Jim Sigafoos class. Was adjusted by Burl Pettibone, my first adjustment ever, and just absolutely fell in love with this profession.
That's awesome. So you graduated in 98, and then what'd you do? Did you associate or you opened right up?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said this. I knew that I was always going to own my own business, but I also knew that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I suggest for everyone to go work with someone that is going to supply you the systems and the knowledge that's going to train you and not just use you as just a tool to get adjustments out of. So I did that. I went with a guy named Mike Martin in Plano, Texas. It was the largest chiropractic clinic in North Texas at the time. Mike had been involved in writing the laws for chiropractic in the state of Texas. And so went with him and worked with him for probably 2.5, maybe 3 years before I opened up my first practice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I tell young docs all the time when they have the opportunity to speak with them, I think associating is a great thing to do, but the most important choice you can make is who you associate with. Make sure that their practice is what you want to learn.
Oh, there are so many unfortunate chiropractors that have been put in positions now, and maybe due to loyalty, whatever, have been stuck there for quite some time and not really learning or growing as they should.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's fast forward. Okay, so you did a fantastic associateship, 2.5 years, and then you opened your own. So tell me about the practice that you built, the practices that you built. What makes them unique? What's special about what you teach doctors to do?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say my first one was very unique at that time. In fact, it was complete hell. And it's funny because the doc that I worked with, he said, you need to stay here for 5 years to really understand and learn. I said, well, he just wants to keep me here. I get that. Until I went and opened the practice and I go, oh my God, he was right. There's just so much stuff I have to learn. So I wouldn't necessarily say that was too unique. It was your basic chiropractic clinic. I guess back then we called them mixers and straights, and I was the mixer type. I loved my rehab protocols, but I've always been very principally based on chiropractic. it really wasn't until later on, until I actually failed a few times. What people don't realize is that I got so frustrated with this profession, literally about 8 years into it, because no one was making any sense to me. Right? No one, like 2 + 2 didn't equal 4 anymore. That's, why are people that have been practicing for 20 years still asking if they have a day 2 reported findings or a day 4? It's like, why are we asking these questions? And so I just completely left the profession. And it was the best thing that I ever have done. It was the worst year of my life. The money that we invested into these businesses went up. I went belly up in the process. But it was really unique during that time. There was a lot of, and the reason I'm very steadfast today that I feel like I've been called by God in this profession, because there was a lot of pulling back in that direction. I'm sitting here looking at warehouses for, supplies, and I'm finding things. I'm thinking, well, this would be a really good chiropractic clinic. So it took about a year of doing that and realizing that, man, you really were. That day that when Jen Sigafus spoke and Bill Pettibon adjusted you and you were that fired up and said you wanted to do this for the rest of your life, that's who you've always been. And so then I won't go into all the details behind it, but got back into it and was so traumatized, I think, at the time from going belly up that I didn't want to rock the boat too much. So when I found a new location in a small town called Montgomery, Texas, I decided, I'm going to go and just be the local chiropractor. That's all. I would maybe treat the sports teams. That sounds great to me. And literally, this is Larryisms all the way. It was 3 months into it. I'm walking around the practice. I'm looking at the parking lot, visualizing parking spaces, cars in my parking places. And it was just, and then 6 months later, they actually started building parking places at that location. So, but here's another thing. I mentioned Larry Markson's name. This was about the same time when Larry had branched off, and Brett and his son Rick started the Markson Connection. And I saw Larry at a seminar, and I said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Yeah, we're growing. The economy's terrible, but we're growing." And so I joined back with Larry at that time, and man, it was amazing to see what that year off did to me, to be able to step back and say, how do I want to do this?
Yep.
What seems like the right way to practice this? And so that's when I started building what we see today is Sandstone Chiropractic. And it was really built because of those situations that happened to me.
You'll excuse what I'm about to say. I so love the fact that you failed and floundered. Okay, no, I don't love that part of it. But what you learn from it, and man, and the huge success that you've become. I mean, you're one of my heroes. And so to hear that story, so now we're going to talk about the success that you've built, having come from those ashes. So tell me about what makes the offices unique now.
It's funny because there's a lot of people that kept asking us, and I'm going to give you one boring answer. And what's different about us is that we found a way to inject these cash-based type therapies, but the therapies that really get people well, the class 4 lasers and localized cryotherapies, pulse electromagnetic field therapies, and of course everyone has a spinal decompression. We started looking at that model and getting away from this insurance model. Now, granted, we still take insurance, and that's what really delineates us. Is it's like our profession says, you either have to be all cash, or you have to be all insurance. And I don't think that's really the case. And I don't tell people they have to do one way or the other, because it's what they feel comfortable with, their passion lies, sure. How they want to practice. But we built a hybrid practice, and we still take 80% cash. But there's still those individuals that want to use their insurance. And for example, if I have a patient that comes in that has $1,000 benefit, but they have let's say a $4,000 care plan, they're more than willing to do that $4,000 care plan with you if their insurance takes care of a portion of that. So we started doing that, and this is the black and white answer for you. We started doing that, started generating a lot of cash. But then people started asking me, said, so what are you guys doing that's so different? Because you can't just put fancy equipment in your office with good principles, chiropractic principles, and expect it to just take off. It doesn't do that. And so they started asking me, and I kept repeating. I said, well, we have a complete package. And it wasn't until I was given a presentation in front of a group, I said, well, let me define what that perfect package looks like. And so, like everyone else, I came up with some numerical-based presentation with 7 this, 5 that.
Right.
But I identified 4 Ps in my practice that we were doing Then we paid neurotic attention to detail too, and the first one was presentation, and presentation is something that, in my opinion, gets overlooked because some people don't really think about it too much. I mean, for example, when you have your technical computer guys building a website, there's guys that are good on the back end. They can make it technically savvy, but they suck on the front end, and it looks terrible.
Right. The user interface doesn't work.
Right. But presentation isn't just walk into an office that smells and looks good. Larry used to say this all the time: get those posters off your wall. Why we still put these chiropractic posters on the walls? And so they were beautifully in that respect. But presentation is about how you deliver your report of findings. It's about how you deliver what you're wearing to the patient. I mean, it's every single thing that means a lot. And I used to say a long time ago, we don't use them anymore, but if you're handing a patient paperwork on something that's been copied 1 million times and it's crooked on the paper with a cracked clipboard, I'm starting to think, what else is going on behind the scenes?
Yep.
That they're not paying attention to detail here. So that's one of them. And I'll run through these pretty quickly. But the second one, and which is really important, is your procedures. You just have to have good procedures you believe in, and everybody in your office has to understand how these procedures are benefiting patients, period. And you spend a lot of time training, procuring different things that you can add procedural to your office. Third thing is PR, and I use PR is kind of public relations. That's your marketing. You cannot. There's too many. The average chiropractor in this country right now spends about $12,000 yearly on marketing.
Oh, I believe
and
it.
If you're not, yeah, and if you listen, and the average chiropractor also brings, I think, a total about $400,000 to $500,000. That's way below the 10% mark that you have to put into marketing. So, but we've always been cognizant of that, and we push our marketing. So that's one thing. When you ask doctors, what's your biggest problem? They say, I want new patients. Well, tell me about your marketing. Well, I don't do marketing. I'm a referral-based doctor. Well, that's not working too well for you.
Right.
So, but then the last one, and by far the most important, this is really where we shine in our company, because, and I've said this before on stage, that we're a personal development company disguised as a chiropractic company, and our people are the foundation of everything that we do. And so this is how you grow a business. I tell them, I say, if you really want to be successful in business, you got to come up with a vision, and I don't care what that vision is. It's got to be, you have to have a vision for it, and then you have to sell it to people. And those people are the people working inside your office that then tell everybody else that comes in office how awesome you are. So that's kind of how we break it down and say this is why we developed something, because we pay so much attention to those 4 Ps.
Tony, it is so obvious why you're the huge success that you are. I mean, you just laid this out so crystal clear that anybody can understand this, and it makes absolute total sense. I love everything you've just said.
Yeah, and it's very simple.
So I had told you when we in our pre-conversation that one of the things I was going to ask you is, so you have an opportunity here. You're speaking to the entire profession, literally around the world. So what would you say your 3 keys of success are? And I'm not sure if the 4 Ps are part of those 3 keys or not, but I really want to dive into that.
Yeah, that's it's funny. Anytime I get that question, I go, only 3? Because it's like, because think about it. I mean, there's thousands of things you have to be doing right in order to be successful. With you, your business, with everything, your relationships, you have to be doing so many things right, and there's only 1 or 2 that would take it all down. So, I thought about this, and I think going back to a previous answer, everybody wants to use answers like, well, you have to have grit. Well, maybe not all the time. I know people that are very successful that don't appear to have a lot of grit. They can sit behind a computer and make millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So that may not be it. Another answer, what's it? Drive, ambition, motivation, all these other things. I used to use consistently patient over time. Mm-hmm. I think I would just have to say, let's make it simple again. Let's say, look, as the owner, as the developer, as the innovator, you have to have that vision. You just have to have something to go for. Something to go for that you'll stay consistent with over time. And then second, like I said earlier, sell to the people. Because once you're able to do that, it changes everything. See, people don't realize that Henry Ford failed multiple times when he was trying to create what they call the horseless carriage, which is the car at the time, before the 1900s. Failed several times. And it wasn't until he created Ford Motor Company that he found success. But that's what he did. He had there's a clip, I wish I could show it on video now, of how he described what this was going to be like, this horseless carriage. And it was amazing to see his vision. And he was able to sell that to the best engineers, and then they followed him. So maybe I'm simplifying this too much, but without a vision, you have nothing, right? Without people to sell that vision, you have nothing. And without being consistently patient over time, you have nothing. So I say those are probably my three.
Wow. I'm going to ask you to repeat those three one more time because you blew through them so quickly.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I forgot what they were. No, it was, so vision or reason, or however you want to describe that, for doing what you're about to do. Number two, you have to have people to sell that vision. So you have to be good explaining that vision to people and get them excited about it. And then number three, hang in there, because it's going to require a lot of consistent patience over time to get it right.
Yep, and that is so true. I've done so many of these interviews now, and it's just absolutely beautiful how the seeds of success are just overlapping, and one rolls right into the other. Yours are absolutely beautiful, and that matches up so consistently with so many of the other interviews. I couldn't be happier with everything that I'm hearing that we're doing together. So let me ask you a question. Being where you are at this so advanced stage of life that you are, is it possible in today's world, here it is 2025, for a young doc just coming out of school or somebody who's sitting in practice and they're just floundering, lost, is it still possible in today's world, beginning right now, to become a huge success? Or has the time passed?
That's a trick question, isn't it? Because we know the answer to that.
Well, I know you do, and I think I do, but I need to hear you say your answer.
Yeah. Man, listen, you can't have success without failure. You can't be dropped off on top of Mount Everest without walking up it first. They're in Pareto's principles always going to play. They're going to be very successful people. They're going to be people that want to be successful that never make it. So absolutely, there are a lot of people right now. In fact, one of the young budding guys that's going to lead the profession may be listening to your podcast right now and thinking that they may not have what it takes to become that person. And I've done that. I've sat in conferences before I felt like I was even becoming who I am today, and sat there and watched these people getting awards going, how come that's not me? And getting frustrated with that, but it just wasn't my time yet. I still had to put a lot of work in. And so no matter where someone is right now, I don't care. They don't have to be young, Robert. They could be in their mid 40s. In fact, there was at one point when the majority of all things invented in the world were done by 70-year-olds. Not today because technology, but that's so. Absolutely. And I want to encourage people that feel like they're down or feel like they can't make it or they've entered a setback or whatever this is, or they're not smart enough is another thing. To just let that go, man, and just start walking one step at a time in that direction and making smart moves in the process. But you will eventually get there when the time is right. When the time is right. Listen, I mentioned earlier that I went belly up. I lost every single thing to my name. And I'm telling you, when you're in chiropractic college and you're going to school and you're broke, that's not a big deal. Everybody around you is broke, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get out and you have some form of success, and then you lose everything, and then one evening you go and you look in the pantry and your wife's pregnant and you got a 3-year-old kid and you have no food in your pantry to feed your family. Because that happened to me. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened when I turned my life around, because I sat down that evening. I didn't mean to talk about this story, but I sat down that evening, I sat at my desk, broke as anything, and I had a piece of paper sitting there, and I was reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, for probably the 10th time, I don't know, and it's all marked up, and I'm at that place where he's talking about if you really want, what you have to do is you have to write it down, you have to be specific about what you want, when you're going to get it, who's going to benefit by it, and then you read that 3 times a day. And so on this piece of paper, on one side of it, I was writing things like, okay, I need to get, food, because I had no food.
Right.
But I needed things like inspection stickers for my car. And just things were like $30 at the time. And then as I got further down that list, I started dreaming a bit, because I was now in a lake community. Of course, I wasn't on the lake at the time, but now I need a boat, So the dreaming actually fueled me a bit too. But there's one, on the other side of the paper, I wrote this paragraph like Napoleon Hill said, write it. And I did. And the only thing I didn't do, Robert, is I did not read that 3 times a day, because you know what I did is I wrote it and I put it in a drawer.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what's cool about that. This is a year and a half before I wrote that. Now, I'll tell you the exact numbers of this too, because we're talking to a chiropractic audience. I said, June 1st, 2010, I will collect $50,000, because that was, to me at the time when you're broke like that, 50,000 was a lot of money, because I knew that 50,000, if I did my business acumen correctly, that would bring me $20,000 in profit home.
Mm-hmm.
That was a year and a half earlier. And guess what? I found that piece of paper on June 3rd, 2010, and we collected $400. It was $50,400. And it hit me so, I didn't read it 3 times a day, but it hit me at that time. I said, it's good to write down your goals when you need that direction. And we write down our goals still all the time. But when something's so embedded, ingrained in your heart, you think about it a million times a day, you can't escape it.
Oh, yeah. And whether you do it consciously or subconsciously, you make it happen.
It's a desire. It's not material. It doesn't have to be spoken. It's an energy wave that you put out there in the universe.
Exactly.
And when it's strong enough, it hits a lot of people.
Yep. Okay. So, Tony, we're starting to run out of time. I got to ask you a couple more questions. I need to know, how do you define business success?
I'm very pragmatic when it comes to things like that. So I think business is business and business is numbers. And I define it, depending on what business you decide to get into, because they all have different profit margins and different revenues. And I can't define as a success if it brings you $1 million, because some businesses don't. But if you can generate a good profit from the business you selected, I feel that's successful and you enjoy doing it. And that's the black and white part of that. It's I could say it helps a lot of people, and of course it does. What we chose to do, it does. But yeah, that's how to define business success.
That's beautiful. So bottom line, there's got to be a profit, and you got to enjoy it along the way. It's not supposed to be drudgery. So if that's business success, how do you define personal success?
Yeah, that would be a little different, because now no pun intended, we're getting personal. A long time ago, I was taught by Larry Marchand again, and he had us asking, what do we want to leave for our legacy? And I never realized it would be such a difficult exercise, because I didn't know what that really meant. To me, in life, personal success starts with what I envisioned when I was having my first kids. I want successful kids, and they're 20 years old and 17-year-olds and looking like that's going to be accomplished.
Excellent.
I want a very happy marriage, because that's what I wanted. And I've got a phenomenal wife. We've been married for 22 years now. That's successful. But ultimately, how many people can I reach and can I touch? And whether that be the patients I've touched over time, the chiropractors I've touched over time. And Robert, I've got really big plans for the future too that I won't share today, but it allows me to continue that legacy. So that's how I define personal success. I mean, that's fulfilled, happy.
I love that. I so love that. And Tony, having known you for all these years, that doesn't surprise me. That is exactly who you are. So one last question for you. You and I were both inspired by Larry Marchand, as much younger people. If somebody has listened to this interview and they go, wow, this DeRamus guy, you know what? I've drawn a line in the sand. I'm ready to start being successful. What would you say to them is their first step?
Take the step. That's it. Take the step. I don't care what direction you go in. Just take the step. There's so many different ideas that have been buried somewhere. Just take the step.
I love it. Oh my God. Tony, I can't thank you enough. Dr. Tony DeRamus, you're an inspiration. You've helped thousands and thousands of people over the years, and I'm thrilled to call you my friend, and really, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this interview today.
Oh, same here, Robert. Man, I was so excited when you reached out to me, and great talking to you and your audience.
I will look forward to speaking to you again soon.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.